Recently, the FCC posted their independent test and lab results for the NBA Jam Arcade1Up cabinet, and there's some pretty cool things publicly out there as a result of these tests. Now, if this sounds like a head scratcher to you, it shouldn't, because the FCC regulates anything that goes out on the television, radio, or internet airwaves. In this case, we've got a Wi-Fi enabled cabinet, so of course they're going to test it rigorously and make sure it doesn't give us cancer or give us superpowers. So let's go ahead and explore some of these interesting tidbits that we got from these FCC tests. So one of the first things that was posted publicly was the official instruction manual for the NBA Jam cabinet. Go ahead and pull this up real quick. Now, there's not a whole lot of new information here. It's just kind of, our standard verbiage and everything that we get in the packages inside the retail box when we're putting together our cabinet. Just shows you simply the basic control functionality, legal verbiage, installation, power supply, all that kind of thing. Nothing really impressive here. So let's go ahead and find something else. So next, they had the label artwork. Now this is the actual sticker that's always on the back of the cabinet that no one ever really pays attention to unless they're trying to register the serial number. But this is where we get the FCC ID that you're able to look up this information with. So you see it right here. It's plastered on the back of almost all the arcade cabinets. Goes through the legal verbiage. Again, nothing too out of the ordinary here. Here's where it gets really interesting and funny though, because here we have their conducted emissions test pictures. As we can see, this lonesome little NBA Jam cabinet sitting in this test room and being regulated and measured for any kind of off-putting emissions that potentially could be hazardous to the consumers. Another test they were doing is radiation, because again, we don't want to have superpowers. Well, I want superpowers, but I'd prefer to get them a much more organic way as opposed to playing NBA Jam and, I don't know, having a third arm or whatever kind of superpower would get from the radiation. But we can see this, again, another lonesome NBA Jam cabinet on the pallet being tested for radiation emissions. Now here's where things really start to get interesting. We have internal photographs. As you can see here, here's the back of the monitor with our PCB and everything, and we have the Wi-Fi antenna here on the back of the monitor, so that's pretty interesting, connected to the PCB via this connection. And we also have our standard light up marquee, our power, and our audio connection. So that looks all the same. Looks to be using the same BOE monitors that all the recent releases have been using thus far. Here's another breakdown of the PCB in the inside, and now you can start to see things are a little bit different, but they're, for the most part, more along the lines of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Marvel cabinets that we've seen recently. Go over to the next set of pictures. Here we can see some expanded pictures on the PCB itself. Aha, but this is where things really start to get interesting, because I started to notice, I'm like, wait a minute, this one is slightly different than what I'm accustomed to. So to help explain that, let me pull up this. So here is my Street Fighter 2 cocktail cabinet PCB. This is the same kind of PCB that's being used on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Marvel Superhero, again, the newer style cabinets. When we place these side by side, you can notice there's subtle differences. So for the most part, things on the right side of the board are pretty much the same. We got power, pin outs for the monitor, the pin out for the control deck again, heatsink, covering up the chipset itself, but on the left side we have the Wi-Fi antenna connection as well as the Wi-Fi chipset here, whereas our older boards don't. So we've got new and improved boards on this NBA Jam cabinet. Specifically, go over to the next page, we have the heatsink removed, and now we can tell that this is using the Allwinner A40i chipset. So looking here at the manufacturer's website and listings of their overview, highlights, and specifications on this chipset, you can see that the CPU architecture is a quad-core ARM Cortex A7 processor. The GPU is a Mali 400 MP2 GPU, supports for 3D and 2D, so that's probably the most important part of this whole thing, because with NBA Jam hang time, we're running into things like Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 level architecture, so you really needed some faster, beefier processing power to make sure that game runs smoothly and runs the way it should. And I was happy to see when I was testing the prototype units at CES that these games all looked and played fantastic. So now we know why they've got this nice, new and improved A40i processor. Going back, looking at the board again, everything's the same. Looking on the back of the board, again, not really interesting there. One thing to note though, when I was looking at these pictures, I didn't see anywhere for an Ethernet cable to go. So I'm just gonna hazard a guess, and literally this is just me guessing, that the Ethernet connection would maybe be on the back of the Wi-Fi antenna here where you can actually plug in there. But that's literally me guessing because I don't see any pictures on these PCB or anywhere else to plug in an Ethernet cable. And that is one thing they did mention, that this will have both Wi-Fi and Ethernet capabilities on this cabinet. Going over, looking at the PCB board again, we've got the chipset for the Wi-Fi taken off there. They've removed it from the PCB board itself. And you can see that it is a CD Tech B18188F, and honestly you can go look it up at the manufacturer's website, but I promise you there's nothing really interesting about it. It's just a Wi-Fi chipset, operates on a 2.4 gigahertz range, so if you're out there expecting and hoping for whatever reason that this was going to be 5G Wi-Fi, well, you're going to be sadly out of luck. And I only mention that because I know there's literally somebody out there, because you can't please everybody, that was going to be upset that this isn't 5G Wi-Fi capable. Below that picture we have the underside of the control deck itself, and we can see upon examination that this is using the same buttons and switches that we've seen in recent releases, as well as probably the exact same Sanwa clone joysticks that we've also seen on recent releases. All 4 joysticks have square restrictor gates installed. If you want to swap those out, personal preference, everyone's able to do whatever they want as far as their modifications. The original arcade had HAP joysticks. Installing HAP joysticks on here is probably going to give you a little bit of clearance issues, especially on the side here, because those HAP joystick bases are much wider than these Sanwa JLF style joysticks. Next up, we've just got pictures of the board for the buttons and the joysticks itself. Nothing too crazy, things we're pretty much familiar with. And then we also have a picture of the board for the monitor. Again, we're using the BOE 17-inch monitors that we've seen on recent releases, the new and improved style, that look really great. Last but not least, we have some external photos, and these are just some glamour shots they took for reference. Here you can see again another lonesome cabinet sitting there for reference shots. And one thing you'll notice is that there is no light up deck protector in any of these photos. While it is coming, it is just not part of these reference photos for whatever reason. Nothing out of the ordinary. This is what we fully expected to see. I thought these were kind of amusing. Gotta lay it down on the side and get every angle. And that is it for this video, guys. I just wanted to give you that brief little tidbit of information. Hopefully somebody out there found it informative as well as interesting. I'm always intrigued by these little things that go on in the background that people take for granted. So since it's slow news because of the world as it is and the coronavirus and everything, I just thought it'd be interesting to share that with you. NBA Jam still looking like a July release, fingers crossed, so I'll pass along more information and news as I get it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know every time I upload more great content like this. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. It really means a lot.